1, 2, go.
Nigeria's fatherland, with love and strength and faith, the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to this press conference, and I'm very sure that you know the reason why we are having the press conference. Just last Friday, we were fortunate to have a brand new Companies and Allied Matters Act, year 2020. I would say we are fortunate in the sense that the last time we had the repeat act was in 1990, and then I was in final year at the University of Lagos. I happened to be one of the first sets to use CAMA, the Companies and Allied Matters Act 1990. And 30 years thereafter, we are having another one. So it was a thing of joy to everybody in Nigeria that eventually we now have a new law to regulate these other spheres of life. Other spheres of life in the sense that God created human being. It is this particular law that creates another human being, in the sense that it is this law that now creates artificial entities that are given the same rights as those human beings created by God. And now we have the opportunity of the new act, redefining the new maybe corporate platform and systems, and to ensure that our laws are in tune with reality, and as much as possible to assist businesses to succeed and thrive. The law actually is coming at the right time. COVID with its challenges, I think this law will attempt to offer some palliative in the sense that to assist to reboot the system and make things easier and better for all stakeholders, and that is why we welcome the new law. As an institute, that is the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, the hub of governance professionals, it is our responsibility whenever we have a major enactment like this to reach out to stakeholders in order for them to know the new provisions, the new obligations, the new requirements, and changes in such a way that all stakeholders will be on the same page. We've seen several summary of what we regarded as highlights. What you discover is that people interpreted or perceived the highlights based on their understanding and area of focus. And then it is necessary for us to do something like a deep dive. And the only way you can do that is for you to go through the act itself to see the changes, the improvement areas, and as it is with any other piece of legislation, there is no legislation that is perfect. So it's for us also to identify areas that we still need to consider closely in order to have a better legislation. By and large, we celebrate the new act, and I'm very sure that all of us, Nigerians, foreigners, we are happy that we have an improved legislation in Nigeria, and that's why we are having this particular press panel. So I am ready and willing to respond to questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are going to make this as orderly as possible. We just want each of the media person to ask one question and give room for the other party to do so. We don't want the questions elongated, brief, straight to the point so that the president can respond accordingly. So we want to start with Gloria and Gavin.
Are there controversial provisions in the 2020 CAMA bill? And also, are there anything that you would love to have been included in the new bill? And if not, sorry,
Yes. I got it. Yes, as I earlier said, we are celebrating the new act. That does not mean that there are no controversial provisions. The words that readily come to mind, maybe I would have preferred to start with the good aspect of the bill. The good thing about this new legislation is that in the 1990 Act, we had something like a private company and a public company, broadly speaking. And under the private company, 1990 Act also provided for what is called a small company, and it defined a small company. Now, the beauty of this new act is that apart from private, public, and also the subset, a small company, we now have a single shareholder company. So it is now possible for an individual to form or incorporate a company and be the sole shareholder of the company. And the beauty of that is that it reflects the reality. If you look at almost, at least not less than 60% of the existing private companies, they are actually owned by one person. However, because the requirement of the law is that you must have minimum of 2 persons, so you have to join your husband, or you join your wife, or you join your children, or you join your friends. But in reality, those people do not actually have anything to do with that particular company. So it was more of far away from the reality in most cases, particularly the private companies. And to now say, if you know that the owner, and there is no point deceiving anybody, come out straight and say, I'm the sole owner of this company, and the law now recognizes that fact. And to me, it's more of transparency so that things can be better done. And I like the legislation that encourages people to be transparent, to say it as it is. The beauty of that is that we now know who the owner is or who the owners are. If, for example, you decide to form a one-man business, then you are allowed to do that. The beauty of that is that in the past, some people allotted shares to friends just to make up the number, only for developments to happen later. Maybe the real owner dies, and because the other person has been allotted share, the other person by law is a shareholder, and then the other person takes charge of a company it has nothing to do with or has no stake, other than the fact that a friend or a close relative have used that particular name. So it's closer to reality. However, that does not mean that the single shareholder company does not have its problem. You know, basically, the purpose of artificial entity is to ensure perpetuity, to ensure that they continue in business for a long time. So the challenge is that if the sole shareholder dies, it means that that company also technically will die. So that is the low side of this particular aspect. But the good side is that let people come up if they want more than one person to form a company. They will engage people who are actually interested, not those that will be brought in to fulfill legal requirement. So that to me is the beauty, is one of the highlights of this particular regulation by recognizing a single shareholder. And apart from that, if you have whether it's a private company, you still need to find out, is it a small company? If it's a small company, is it a single shareholder company? If it's a single shareholder company, the liberty is now also granted. You don't need to hold it. Because if you look at it, if a trader is involved in business in the demoter, and he can manage his or her business, and so the issue of having AGM, what new thing will he bring to the table? So that particular requirement of holding AGM is dispensed with respect of a single shareholder company, and also in respect of a small company. So it's not mandatory for you to hold AGM. And because a single shareholder company has been recognized, it also allows them, if you want to hold your AGM or other statutory meetings, if you are a small company or you are a single shareholder company, you can actually hold it outside the country. So if a Nigerian or any entity that is registered in Nigeria decides to hold AGM, which is optional for a small company or a single shareholder company, you can decide to hold it aside. However, for private companies, those requirements are saying that you must still hold your AGM and your AGM must be held in Nigeria. So that one should be taken note of. In addition to that, this particular legislation has also taken care of one aspect which is relevant to COVID. COVID came at a time when companies were preparing to hold their AGM for the previous year. So they could not hold the AGM. And unfortunately, the 1990 CAMA Act has no provision for electronic AGM. So it was mandatory then that it should be the manual or the physical AGM. Now, this particular legislation has given the liberty for a private company, a small company, a single shareholder company to hold their AGM electronically, that is virtually. So the beauty of that is that even if you have more than one shareholder, as long as you qualify as a small company or a private company, you can hold your AGM virtually. And also, in the spirit of flexibility, the 1990 companies and land matters are provided that you must have two directors. Now, this particular one has given the small company, the single shareholder company, also that flexibility. You can have one director because, let's be real, who owns the business? I'm the owner of the business. So, if you are the shareholder, so why do you need to use the name, a fake name, just to pure righteousness? So, that flexibility is also there to have one director, and it's an excellence of it. And the other aspect is that because most of these business owners, they can man their business end to end. So it is fair that if you are a single shareholder company, it is optional for you to have a secretary. If you are a small company, it is optional for you to have a secretary. However, if you are a private company, that is, you do not fall within the definition of small company, and you are not a single shareholder company, you must have a secretary. And that is the reason why it is important for us to clarify this misleading information going on that a private company is no longer mandatory to have a secretary or a company secretary. There is something like that in the Companies and Land Matters Act 2020. Section 330 of the new act makes it clear that except for a small company, every company shall, not may. So if you don't qualify as a small company, and they define small company, if you go to section 394 of that particular act, 6 requirements are listed, and those 6 requirements are cumulative. So you must fulfill all those 6 requirements for you to qualify as a small company. You must be a private company. Apart from being a private company, your turnover must not be more than 120 million. Apart from that, your net asset must not be more than 60 million. There must not be an alien in the company. The government or government agency must not be a shareholder of the company. And in addition to that, the directors must jointly hold at least 51% of the shares. So if the directors are nominal directors and they fulfill all the 5 requirements, and they did not fulfill the other requirement, maybe the director jointly, they hold just 49%. They do not qualify as a small company. And as a result of that, you must appoint a secretary. And the same thing applies to the auditors. So these are the good side of the particular this particular piece of legislation. However, controversial provisions. Let me start with one that I don't know how we came about that, and that is the requirement of audit committee. We have audit committee under CAMA. It provides for equal membership of directors and shareholders, 3, maximum of 6. Now in this new legislation, it has been reduced to 5 members. The members, that is the shareholders, representative will be 3, and representative of the non-executive directors will be 2. The challenge basically is this: a lot of companies in Nigeria have had their AGMs recently. They've complied with the law as at the time or before the passage of this particular legislation. They've appointed constituted audit committee made up of 6 members. So what are we now going to do? Are we now going to an election of audit committee members can only be done at annual general meeting? It cannot be done by circular resolution. particularly for audit committee membership is mandatory for public companies. So the question is now, what will companies now do? Will they now call an extraordinary general meeting in order to reduce the number of members of the audit committee? So that is a challenge, and I do not know how we are going to cope with that. Our expectation is that we should try as much as possible to be close to reality and to say, yes, they've done those acts before the passage of this new legislation. Unfortunately, in the European Civil provisions, it provides that anything validly done under the previous act will still also be valid. So the expectation is that companies will still proceed as they've constituted their audit committees. At the next annual general meeting, they will now endeavor to comply. So that is one aspect of the controversial provision. The other aspect of the controversial provision is the requirement that companies must publish unclaimed dividends in 2 national newspapers. Yes, we can say to give all the members the opportunity to know that they have their names on the record. However, we should look at the challenges. If you look at it from the point of view of data privacy, are we compliant? Yes, you can argue because the law says it should be done. But are we not exposing the data of people which ordinarily we have a way of handling as at now, the companies are required to publish the list and forward to the shareholders themselves with the annual report. So every shareholder receives the list of unclaimed dividend. So it's a dedicated communication to the shareholder. Now, publication in the newspaper is an advertisement to the whole world. And the challenge, apart from data privacy, the challenge basically is this. Fraudsters will now have opportunity to now look at, yes, we have social name. And they can creatively think of something that they can now use to assess dividend of innocent shareholders. I think the CAC and the government will need to remove this particular area because why it is necessary to drive publicity so that the shareholders will be aware that they have their outstanding dividend. We must be mindful of the implications. We should not open the floodgate for fraudsters, even as it is. A lot of fraudsters are capitalizing on the system to use names to manipulate, approach registrars to claim unclaimed dividends that belongs to other shareholders. So that is an area we also need to manage in order to ensure that at least we find a way to handle it in a productive way. The other aspect also that is a little bit controversial it relates to this requirement of appointment by public companies of independent non-executive directors. Ordinarily, one would have thought that that area should have been left for the code of public governance to manage. Now, 3 independent non-executive directors, and those 3 independent non-executive directors are required to be appointed by the majority shareholder that has the right to appoint most of the directors. So the question would then be, where is the role of the minority shareholder if you are now putting this responsibility on the majority shareholders? Are you now saying that in addition to their own, if they are entitled to X percentage of shareholders on the board, that from that X percentage, they should nominate 3, or in addition to that, they should nominate 3? I think it would be necessary to find a way to just clarify that. That would be really helpful, so that we do not create a distortion. And public companies also should be in the position to determine the number of directors. So if you have out of the number of directors a company has maybe 6, and you are saying 3 of them must be independent executive directors. So the question would be, how many of them will be executive directors? How many of them will be non-executive directors? So in terms of proportion, it is not that clear in terms of fair representation, and that should have been an area left to for the code or for the board to decide. Maybe it could have been a percentage, a third, 1/3 of the number of the board, which would have really assisted. So that is another area that one along the line we should find a way to manage. It is the law, but we can also find a proactive way to handle this particular controversial area. I think if we look at it, the other one that is controversial now, if you go to the CAC itself, the Corporate Affairs Commission, the good thing is that they now have a board that is recognized by the new act. Under the 1990 Act, we have the commission, they mention the board and the representatives. Now in the board, they are giving their functions, and very good. They have broad representatives from various stakeholders, including the Institute of General Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. A provision there that we need to be very careful about is the power given to the minister to remove any member of the board if, in his opinion, it's not in the interest of the commission for that member to be on the board. I think that provision is a provision that ought not to have been in our legislation. What transparency requires, what fair hearing requires in the kind of board like that is that if you are going to remove a board member, the board member is not there on his own. The board member is representing a sector or a segment of the stakeholder community. If you are going to remove, the act should have specified the grounds for the removal. The act should have also provided for the opportunity to be given to such a person to respond to whatever indication that gave the minister the opinion that that person is not serving, is not in the interest of the commission for that person to be there. And then that would have provided a balanced position for one to manage that in such a way that we are protecting the interest of corporate Nigeria. We may have a very good minister today that will not use that particular provision, but we can also be on the other side, that you have a minister that feels that things must be done according to his own dictate, and whoever fails to fall in line is not working in the interest of the commission. I don't think that is fair. Although the minister is required to do that consultation with the president, the ideal thing in an environment like this is to ensure that the grounds upon which you form the opinion is objective. Not because as it is now, if in his opinion there is no objectivity behind it, the grounds are not listed for one to know, okay, these are the grounds. The opportunity for fair hearing for such a person to be informed that what you are doing is wrong, and because of that we intend to remove you, is not there. I think that is another controversial area. The other controversial area is that a commission like the Corporate Affairs Commission, with their legislation not providing for a statutory secretary, is something that we could not rationalize. If you look at other MDAs that are not even involved in corporate Nigeria, they do have a statutory provision for the appointment of a secretary, though not properly worded in terms of what we have in the private sector. In the private sector, you have secretary of public companies. Their qualifications and their clearly stated, the experience they must have well laid out in the Code of Corporate Governance. The reporting lines, who are they reporting to? Is it to the CEO, to the chairman of the board? Clearly stated. But in the case of this particular, in the 1990 Act, which has also been replicated in this new Act, there is no provision that there will be a secretary of the to this commission, and these are the qualifications, the experience expected, these are the duties, these are the reporting line. The Act only provides that the commission shall appoint a secretary for to manage to take minutes of meeting of the board. They appoint a staff. It's a staff to act as secretary to take the minutes of the board. That is the only provision you have. Just one sentence. I think of all the acts, if not all, it will be most of the acts I've seen, even not probably one day. This provision happens to be the one that is below par, and we would have expected that Corporate Affairs Commission in charge of corporate entities pushing for corporate governance will do things that will ensure that there is a secretary. It's not just appointment. It's because the secretary is the conscience of that particular commission. Is the secretary that will be in a position to advise the board. That's what we have in the code of corporate governance of that applicable in the private sector. The company, the secretary has been given the responsibility of advising the board on ethics and good governance, conflict of interest. So if you do not have a statutory committee, a secretary, who is saddled with the responsibility of carrying out that particular mandate, who is to advise the board. And if you now give that liberty to the commission to appoint a staff to take the minutes of meeting, then it can be that for each meeting we appoint different staff. So where is the corporate memory that somebody will be in a position to guide the board, because the board will be changing from time to time, and that is the reason why you should have a secretary. I think this is an improvement area. Maybe the CAC have a secretary, yes, that have been appointed by a letter of appointment, but that is not the norm. The norm for all statutory agencies is to have a secretary whose duties, qualification, experience, reporting lines, mode of removal, because that is very key. The best way to destroy any institution is to make it easy for the key officers to be removed at the will and caprices of those in control. Immediately you have tenure and then provision for removal, and that is why the judges are in a position to discharge their duties without any fear or favor, because you cannot just remove anybody. And that is why we will expect that as soon as possible, something will be done by Corporate Affairs Commission to show the corporate entities that they are supervising, that they are actually ahead of the curve and they are doing things in line with what they are doing. Because you cannot be managing the affairs of PSCs, private companies, and they have this structure in place, and you that is in charge to ensure that they do the right thing. You know, I think there is an improvement area. So this would be some of the controversial position which I think we should be in a position to manage.
Okay. Okay. Before you ask your question, I think Mr. Berman's has a follow-up question that you asked.
So my question is that what role are you expecting the government to play in this new law? And secondly, what role are you expecting your members to play in this new law that they just passed?
No, the beauty of this new law is that it has been based on the ease of doing business framework. What the government needs is to ensure that we provide a very conducive environment for the private sector particularly to thrive, because this particular law is regulating the private sector. So, and that's why they have provided a lot of flexibility. As much as possible, they want the private sector to thrive, to be able to form your business with ease. They remove a lot of bottlenecks. You can be the social shareholder. You can sign your statutory declaration of compliance. If you qualify as a small company, you don't need to have a secretary or auditor. You may decide not to hold it. So they try as much as possible to remove anything that will create a barrier between the private sector and facilitation of business. So on that particular point, the government has done excellently. For our members, basically this is a new law. Our members now need as much as possible to reach out to their clients. to educate their client on the changes we have in this new law. The benefits, that is, the flexibility that have been incorporated, how they can take advantage of those flexibilities. And also to advise their clients to ensure that they do things in line with the provision of the law. In every legislation, you have minimum standards. A minimum standard does not mean that you have to stay there. For example, a single shareholder account is an entry point. The expectation is that a single shareholder company will grow to become a small company, will grow to become a private company that is private, that is big enough. And as far as possible, if it's necessary for that particular private company to become a PSC, they will not hesitate to move to the next level. So our members should be in a position to tell them that the mere fact that they allow you to form a single shareholder company does not mean you should rest there, because it has its own low point. Low point in the sense that what happens if anything happens to the owner of the business. You know, when we were doing commerce in those days, say sole proprietorship. I don't think the intention of the law is that when you leave sole proprietorship, you come back to it in indirect form. The intention of the law is that you migrate. So we need to educate them. And also to emphasize one fact. If you are running a business and you are dealing with government agencies, you need a person who is versed in law and the corporate governance to assist you. And that is where our members come in. And also, our members will be in a position to educate us stakeholders that as of today, the law in Nigeria, this new law, is that every private company that is not a small company requires and must have a company secretary. And also, I will expect that every private company that is not a small company should also have an auditor. Because the reason is, except you don't need to interact with the banking sector, or you don't need loan. If you need loan, then you must try as far as possible to comply with certain things. That nobody will give you loan without any historical records. How have you performed your business? So they want the financials. So yes, the law provides that you don't need to appoint an auditor if you are a small company. That is before we that category. However, let's also look at it from this particular angle. If you are a single shareholder company, are we now saying that we cannot have some single shareholder company that is even bigger than a small company? Because these small companies have been determined majorly based on thresholds, not more than turnover of 120 million, not more than net asset of 60 million. So are we now saying that a single shareholder company won't have some shareholder company with turnover of 500 million? So how do we categorize those group of shareholder companies? So the expectation is that the engagement will be there by professionals like our members to educate them, and we expect our members to also up their game. It's not enough for you to incorporate company, give CTC of incorporation documents to your client, and then go away. This is the time to stay with the business, know the nature of the business, know the peculiarities of the business, know the challenges of the business, advise the business on what to do and how to move to the next level. The closer our members are to their clients, the better for them. Clients want value. So our members must be in a position to first add value to themselves and then be in a position to add value to their clients. They should not see their client solely as the source of income. They should see their clients, they should consider themselves as business partners to their client. Business consultant, and everything is not money. You must and we must be willing to render and offer relevant advisory services free of charge in some cases. And as well as possible, I don't think that a lot of clients are looking at cost alone. A lot of clients, just like any human being, we are looking at value. It's only when the cost is more than the value that you think twice. If you know that something will add value, you hardly consider the cost. So that is why we want our members to consider basically how to add value to their clients, how to be a business partner to their client, how to add value to themselves also, and as far as possible, understand the business of your client. There is nothing more convincing that you are part of the business. When you occasionally visit your client or you call your client to say, how is it going, what about this, or you hear a new legislation relating to his or her line of business and say, there is a new legislation on this, so have you complied? How can we comply? Then they will see you as a professional that is not only interested in the sports, but is interested in the progress of that.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. The new act also introduces a framework for rescuing a company in distress to protect it from being insolvent, as in section 434 to 442. What benefits are accruing to the Nigerian corporate world by this provision?
It's a welcome development and provision which is to assist businesses to thrive. Basically, if you look at it, it's like if there is an accident, it's not all victims that you take to the mortuary street. There are some you take to the intensive care unit. This particular provision allowing for the appointment of the administrator or administration is something that I will call a corporate intensive care unit. We do not need to cripple this company by appointing a liquidator, by winding up the company. Let's try to rescue this company. Let's see whether we can salvage this company. Let's apply first aid. Let's try our best. Let's be in a position to satisfy ourselves that this is beyond redemption. That is the reason for this requirement, to now have an opportunity for an administration to come to being, to manage the property, to try as far as possible to rescue the company in such a way that the administrator, in most cases, if there is sincerity, will be in a position to turn around the business. That is, because in most cases, when a petition is filed for winding up, it is only some very minute percentage of the stakeholders that will be filing that petition. Maybe it's only one creditor, and creditor fights. To the creditor, let me get my money and move on. However, there are other stakeholders. Government is also a stakeholder in such a company because government needs stars from that company. So what they are now saying that don't take your own interest far above all other interests. Let's get in an administrator into this particular entity. Let's see whether they can turn around that particular entity. And if that is the case, we will all be better off. Instead of liquidating the company, we now compound the unemployment problem in the country. We also reduce the revenue coming to the government. We also have negatively impact families and dependence of the workers and also the stakeholders. So it's a welcome development, and the expectation is that all stakeholders, and also I will expect that the court should assist. Yes, there is provision that when the administration is in place, petition for winding up will be suspended, liquidator will not be appointed. I will expect the court to actually drive this. What this particular provision is can be likened to what happens in the court, particularly Lagos court now, when you are mandatorily compelled to have a settlement. When you file a case, the matter will not proceed to trial immediately. They first mandate the parties to meet to see how to resolve. That is a replica of that has been incorporated in the corporate world now, to say, don't come to me and say this is the end of the company. Let's find a way to manage this company, because you are not the only stakeholder involved. Let's manage it in the favor of all stakeholders. And I think this particular provision is a welcome development. We as an institute will support it, and we are appealing to all stakeholders to try as far as possible to encourage, to support, so that we can have a successful outing in such a way that a lot of companies will be revived. If you go around, even in Lagos here, you see a lot of big companies in the past that have been grounded because there is litigation in court relating to appointment of receiver. The company will be contesting the appointment of receiver, and then on and on, the business has been closed down. Those who are expecting money cannot get money. A lot of losers in the system. But if you appoint an administrator, it can be a win-win situation for us.
Okay, good. Please. you're not ready, Mr. Ali, you can ask the next question, sir.
The information that is in circulation is that it is optional for a company to appoint a company secretary under the CAMA. Is this information correct?
I've read a lot of summary, even from portals who would not have expected to hear this summary, saying that it's optional for a private company to appoint a secretary. There is nothing like that in the law. Fortunately, we have the law. It is Section 330 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 that says that, except for a small company, every company shall appoint a secretary. So, except where that company is a small company, and as I said, there are 6 requirements before you can qualify as a small company. You must be a private company. Your turnover must not be more than 120 million. Your net asset must not be more than 60 million. There must not be alien in that particular company. The directors must jointly hold at least 51% of the share. Government or the agency must not have any stake in that business. And they are cumulative, so they are not in the eternity. So as long as a company does not fall within that definition, that is the qualifying conditions, as we said in the act, then such a company, even though it's a private company, must have a secretary, because Section 330 says, except for a small company, every company shall have a secretary. And shall in law means a mandatory provision, so it is not optional. But what I will say that even for the small company that has been excluded, they should consider the benefits. The OSS of having a company is to ensure that there is sustainability of the business. And that is why that company has the status as a corporate entity, and it can live, unlike human beings that will die. A company, except when it is wound up, a company will be in perpetuity. So it is expected that a corporate body, a corporate entity must put structure in place to facilitate the sustainability of the business. And one of those things is that when you have a well-trained charter secretary, ask your secretary to manage your affairs, to ensure that they put the right structure in place, particularly governance structure, so that they ensure that it's not only for you to make profit. You will make profit for a year, but what is the guarantee that you continue to be in business? And the only thing that can facilitate the continuity of any business organization is by ensuring that there is structure in place that will put the business on autopilot. Autopilot in the sense that you have the board in place, you have the committees that will assist you. And it is very important that business owners must not see the invitation of other stakeholders to their business as an intrusion. They should look at it from the positive side, that 2 good heads are better than 1. Listen to others. If others are coming with their ideas or criticism, don't consider criticism as something bad. Criticism, in most cases, if you look at it, even when they are very harsh, they are to make you better. So if you have the right structure, you have committees in place, you have, for example, you have auditors. I will still encourage every company, whether it's a single member company, to have company secretary, have auditor. Because as I said, except you are so rich that you won't need any patronage of anybody, you won't need any loan, or you will not apply to any organization. For example, there are some contracts you bid for that they will ask you to provide 3 years previous accounts, or 2 years, or a year. They need your particulars of that your corporation document that you have filed. These things are to be done by professionals. So it is in your interest that you put all these things in place, so that when they are required, you easily provide them. Because what may be fortunate, you are doing a very good business, and gradually you need to expand. And you have maybe access to loan facility in the bank, and the bank, yeah, we are willing to give you. However, the bank also needs some documentation because that will show you where you are coming from, your evolution, and then they will be in a position to do an appraisal. But if you just walk up to a bank and say, I've been trading for 6 years, my turnover is 200 million, you will not say, how do I know that your turnover is 200 million? And in most cases, you will not be willing to disclose or to release your bank statement, because your bank statement could have even show that. But because of confidentiality, you are not willing to release to the bank. So you prefer to release a document that is not too confidential, which is like audited account. You prefer to also have your secretary to go with you to that kind of meeting whereby you can discuss the governance structure in place, and then the stakeholder will be willing to assist.
So you can advise your members on how they up their game, in their businesses, and also help their clients, and also for them to assist in helping their clients to compliance in this new bill. But is there any? Does the institute have any plans to engage stakeholders to ensure compliance on this new legislation?
You know, we are starting that today. This press party is just to reach out to all stakeholders to be aware that there is a new law, and for them to have an idea that we have a new law and these are the ways that the new law will impact on what you are doing. So that is what we are trying to do, and going forward, it will be a continuous. It's a new law, and a lot of people will need to digest. It took time, about 2 days, for me to go through this new law and continue to internalize and digest, and then so there will be programs that will roll out very soon to educate the stakeholders, particularly because of these new changes that we have. For example, I talk about the audit committee, I talk about the independent non-executive directors. These are new areas that we need clarity on, and then you need to reach out to people so that they understand what must change and why it must be done that particular way. So it's something that we continue to do on a regular basis, and one of the areas also that we need more enlightenment and also engagement with regulatory authorities, particularly Security and Exchange Commission. For example, if you look at the components of ordinary business, now we have a new item that has been added, and it's difficult to understand the rationale of the classification. They talk about normally when you talk about ordinary business of a company, it is to receive the financial report, to receive the report of the audit committee, to declare dividend, to appoint members of the audit committee. Now we have a new requirement that disclosure of the remuneration of the managers of the company. The question is this: who are the managers? I've gone through the act, I cannot find the definition of manager. If you say managers, what is the threshold? Where are we starting from? Is there anybody that carries that nomenclature, manager, in a company that is a manager? So we need clarity on that particular definition because it is not stated in this particular act. That is one level. The other leg is that if it's an item of the ordinary business, if it's disclosure, if it's just disclosure, why is it an item of the ordinary business? Because every item that is part of the ordinary business on the agenda requires, except for presentation of financial statement, requires resolution of shareholders. They have to vote one way or the other. So if it is just to disclose, will it just be, is it a disclosure requirement? One would have expected that, okay, disclosure in the annual report, in which case is disclosed as an item, and then you can draw the attention of the shareholders. But when you are now saying that ordinary business will include declaration, disclosure of the remuneration of managers, you have not defined the managers, you have not defined the purpose, how it will be handled. If it's just disclosure, are we now saying that when we get to that item on the agenda, the chairman will now say, we hereby disclose that the remuneration of the managers of our company is 10 million naira. And so what? What next? So we need clarity. The expectation is that ordinarily that provision should have been a disclosure requirement in the annual report and not part of the ordinary business. So it's going to create a confusion because, as I said, whether it's a special business or ordinary business, all the items on the agenda requires a resolution. That is, and every resolution requires that the shareholder should vote either way. But in this one, disclosure. So it's as to say, the managers, we don't even know the managers we are talking about now. Okay, assuming we know, or we do. So we now say the managers enter in. So should it be reduced or should it be increased? Or are you approving it? So we need clarity on that. And I think that is another area where we need to have engagement with our key stakeholders like the Government Affairs Commission. Maybe they will come up with a regulation to clarify that particular aspect because as at now it is not there. It's not there.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We've been receiving questions from
Okay.
participants from the other end.
Okay.
Maybe I can just read some
Okay.
to you, sir. I think some of them you already answered, but you can still address. Can a single member company hold an AGM, and what will be the nature?
You know, I think it's just to avoid that kind of ambiguity. That's why we have in the law whether a single member company can hold the AGM is not mandatory. Because except we are talking of a monologue, and I hope such a single shareholder will not be considered as having mental problem if he's holding a meeting with himself. So the law does not make it a requirement. It's dispensed with. It doesn't really make any sense, and that is why it's not a requirement.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And then there are two questions that are interwoven here. One is that when is the new CAMA 2020 becoming effective? And the second one is that what happens to a winding up process that's already in progress for the law?
Effective date of the law is not stated here. However, we have the rules for interpreting the commencement of any law. If the law states clearly the effective date, then the effective date stated will be the operational date. For example, if you look at the Finance Act, when it was passed in 2019, the effective date was made February. So we can have it, but we don't know how that. However, if that is not expressly stated, the requirement of the law is that that law is effective right from the day it was signed by the president, which was on Friday, I think 7th of August, 2020. So that is the effective date. In respect of ongoing transactions, the savings provision in the Act has catered for anything that has been done or is being done. So they are recognized. However, in finishing up those outstanding items, one should also be prepared to comply with any modification that has been introduced by this new law. I also expect that there will be flexibility on the side of regulatory agencies. If you have started a winding up process, the court and other stakeholders involved will be in a position to also interpret it in a flexible manner to say, yes, we can allow you to go 100% under the old act, or if nobody should ask or nobody will expect that you should start all over again. No, because of the savings provision. The savings provision has ratified and validated all as have been done under the old law. It wasn't as if it was an integrative. The only thing that we now have changes, and in incorporating those changes, it will be incorporated in a very sensible way and in a less impactful way that will affect the process. So it's not something that will have a damaging effect on transactions. However, there are certain things we need to talk about, which I will regard as missed opportunities. Missed opportunity in the sense that what are those things that ordinarily we should have incorporated in this new bill that were left out? And fortunately or unfortunately, we are still battling with COVID. And the WHO gave us an outlook that the earliest time this thing will be over will be 2021. We've not been able to ascertain that we have a vaccine as a plan that can take care of COVID. Now, let's do a small projection. God forbid, if we have COVID up to the first half of next year. How will PSCs hold their AGM? Are we going to start all over again with this trial and error, back and forth, go to CAC, appoint 20 persons to attend AGMs, hold AGM by proxy, when we now have a new law 5 months after COVID that should have incorporated that? We would have expected that the electronic, the virtual AGM allowed for private companies should have been extended to all PSCs. Yes, the reservation is there to say PSCs, they have larger shareholders if it's held virtually. However, we must be conscious of new reality. If you look at most of the private universities, since the outbreak of COVID, they've been having their lectures, they've been having their exams. Churches and mosques, online services are going on a daily basis. So the question would then be, why can't we take advantage of this new law coming after COVID to actually provide that flexibility? And that's why in April this year, we actually advised all stakeholders, particularly the National Assembly, to find a way to come up with a new legislation similar to what we have in Switzerland, the coronavirus concerns, and also in UK. UK and Switzerland in March, few weeks after the outbreak of COVID, came up with this legislation to allow companies to hold their AGMs and also empowers companies to decide the number of people they will allow into the venue. Now, for us to have this same challenge next year of what should we do, or be scrambling for how to manage AGM, I think it's a missed opportunity. And yes, we raised the issue when we had our webinar in May with all the stakeholders, Corporate Affairs Commissions, Protein Exchange Commission, Nigerian Stock Exchange, to say, though it was said to be late to incorporate this new act, but we still have an economic emergency stimulus bill at the National Assembly, which has been passed by the House of Representatives since the first quarter of this year. That particular stimulus bill can still provide for situations like that. That is, whenever we have an outbreak whereby mass gathering is not allowed, then companies should be in a position to hold their AGM by providing those guidelines. It will be applicable when we have emergencies like this group. But for us not to have a law to regulate that, I think is a missed opportunity, and we just need to also find a way to manage that. The other missed opportunity is that good thing now on this new act, filing can be done with CAC electronically. Fantastic. So it means that the CAC has gone digital, which is in line with the current global trend, and we applaud that. However, the benefit of digital workplace is precision, and in terms of timeline, very fast. We would have expected that with digital filing, with electronic filing, that the turnaround period, that the timeline within transaction will be completed by CAC also would have been stated, because whatever is now measured will hardly get the desired value. If I file documents with you electronically, I should also be in a position to get a commitment from you that within so days, within so hours, as long as you have filed or submitted all the documents, your documents must be out. I think if we have that opportunity, it would be fantastic, and I would still expect that the CAC will come up with regulations to give firm timelines, because they've taken this bold initiative of saying, let's go digital, file your document electronically, get your CTC electronically, whatever you file electronically or CTC you obtain electronically can also be tendered in court and it's valid. So the other leg is that, or that service level agreement, is to also have a timeline, and I think that is something that will really assist. And the other missed opportunity is that we know that CSCS has been on Central Security Clearance System for a long time, and share certificates have a lot of shares certificates or shares have been dematerialized. So we have electronic shareholding system. One would have expected that this particular law we have taken cognizance of the electronic shareholding platform that we have in place, at least for PSCs. Yes, for limited liability company or private company, you can say they must still issue share certificates. But for PSCs, if you look at most PSCs, they hardly publish lists of unclaimed share certificates because they are being dematerialized. So if you are now under this new law, you are saying that companies must still issue share certificates. So it means that they will issue the share certificate, but the question is that what will it be used for? If those share certificates, for example, for PSCs, are already dematerialized in the system. So it would have been better, because if you look at most traders, even in the capital market, you buy stock, you buy bonds for the federal government. They can actually, you get your shareholding or allocation resident in your CACS system. So I think that would have been an opportunity for us. At least they could have started with the PSCs to say, for PSCs, they can make it optional. Go this way, in the sense that you can have electronic shareholding for your shareholders, and that would have really assisted. I think it is an area that we still need to work on. It's not bad. And there are some general issues that are applicable to whether private or public company, which all stakeholders must take note. In the past, for PSCs, when you are submitting your accounts, audited accounts, it is required that those accounts must be certified by the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer. Now that provision has now been incorporated in the new law. And so whether private or public, all stakeholders, and I know our members who advise their clients, is now mandatory that there must be a certification of audited accounts, and the format has been provided. For PSCs, there is no issue because it's already in the Investment and Securities Act 2007. They have a template. That template has now been imported into CAMA. So it now means that for audited accounts, it is required for management, because it is MD and the CFO, they are management staff, to do a representation to the board to say that these audited accounts that they are presenting for the approval of the board, they have complied with all the laid down requirements, that there are nothing hidden, there are no issues that they are feeding away from the auditors, and so it is necessary for all stakeholders, whether private or public, to take note of that. And the other one also that is very interesting, which every stakeholder must take note, is that now it is required that every company must have a register of the residential addresses of directors. It's a separate register, different from register of directors. In the past, under the 1990 Act, we have a register of directors and secretary. So it's a combined register. Now it is required that there must be separate register. So you have a register of directors, you also have a register of secretaries. You must also now have a register of residential addresses of the directors. Now, for both the register of directors and the secretary, you also need to state their email addresses and their telephone numbers. So it is not enough for you now to say, the directors on my board do not have email address. Because they say, except it's not especially stated, but the expectation is that they do have. But I think the major one is the register of residential addresses of directors. And every company is mandated within 14 days of changes to those residential addresses to notify the commission. Now, the commission has the power to make those residential addresses of directors available to regulatory authorities or credit agencies. Nothing bad, in the sense that if you look at the motive behind it, I also look at what the CBN has been doing of recent, trying to ensure that no debtor will run away from the system. If you have money with Bank A and you are owing Bank D, so power has now been given to the bank to do something like netting, so that at the end of the day, you don't run away from the small financial system, and it's good. So, and I think it's because of this to also ensure that they do the legwork for investigative agencies to say if you are looking for a director and we don't know where to get that director. So the company that is under an obligation will provide those information to the Corporate Affairs Commission. And when it becomes necessary, the Corporate Affairs Commission can release it to the regulatory authority to say, so director, this is the residential address, and they also credit to agency, this is residential. So these are new things that all stakeholders, particularly company secretaries, charter secretaries, should draw the attention of their clients to say, we need to have these registers in place, and as soon as possible notify the Corporate Affairs Commission whenever it is necessary. In addition to that, something one will also expect, I checked the new law that is not there, and I don't know the reason, is that under the 1990 CAMA, the minister is given the power under Section 16 to make regulations. And the beauty of that is that is an omnibus power to ensure that if there are loopholes or gaps, the minister can make those regulations. However, in this new act, we have powers given to the minister to make regulations in respect of certain areas. We do not have an omnibus clause that gives the minister the power to make regulation. And I think it's something that is very important because there is no law that can envisage all possibilities. And it is necessary for the minister to have that leeway, that flexibility, or a fallback position. If there are new developments, not envisage at that the minister can just find a way to manage and then get things done. Because and that is why in every regulation you have this delegated authority to say you can also do A or B, and as much as possible is something we need to just consider. So it is something that should be noted, and also to all stakeholders. There is a new provision that when you want to sue the Corporate Affairs Commission, you must give reaction notice, so that it becomes part of the system. Unlike what we have, that was missing in the other act, but now I think it's just to enable them to manage the process, so that if there are issues, you can draw the attention to it. And the question then, as you asked the other time, or somebody asked about liquidation in the process, and then okay, it was winding up the process. Now, if we have a new suit instituted against Corporate Affairs Commission, maybe on Monday, just day before yesterday, I hope it will not be raised to say reaction notice of 30 days has not been given to Corporate Affairs, because the law is effective now. So it's just for all stakeholders to be aware that we now have this opportunity for CAC to be given that liberty to know why you want to sue them, to try their best to resolve the issue so that they can manage it. Otherwise, some they will not be able to raise it in respect of pending suits, other than for just case of delay. But everybody should be conscious of that particular new requirement, because it's not something that we can run away from. We just have to do that as much as possible. So it is something that is very important, and I think it will really assist all stakeholders to manage the information better. So we expect we expect that this particular legislation will assist the system as much as possible. For example, the practitioners have been given the option of incorporating a limited liability partnership, which is a corporate entity, and as much as possible. So if you are a firm of charter secretaries, you can decide to have a limited liability partnership. That opportunity has been given, and it will be a separate legal entity. However, you must designate two of the partners who must be individuals to manage the business and to run it for you. In addition to that, we also have the option of limited partnership. So there are two types of partnership. One is limited liability partnership, which is like a company because it has all the features, the benefits of a company. And then we have limited partnership, which is similar to what we were taught that days when we were studying commerce. Limited partnership, in which case it must not be more than 20 partners. You must have general partners running the business. The limited partner, its liability will be limited to the investment in that particular company. So that is the beauty. But if there are issues in respect of limited partnership, the partners are still liable, other than the limited partner. But for the limited liability partnership, the beauty of that one is that it's like a company, and it can also be wound up based on the application of the partners or by the court. So these are good initiatives that we have in the new law, and we are very sure that if we try as much as possible to implement this particular law with free mind, with flexibility, and also willingness to listen to other stakeholders in terms of what are those things that we can do better, is something that will really assist. And we're also conscious of the flexibility created, and that is the beauty of this particular law. If you are incorporating a company limited by guarantee, you know, the law, the bill that was passed by the 8th Assembly, what was communicated as factor responsible for the delay was this requirement that Attorney General's consent must be obtained. The good thing now, which is in line with current trend, is to say yes, he should give consent. However, if we face to give the consent within 30 days, opportunity is given to the promoter to actually do advance, and then the CAC can then run through. So it's something that is very, very, very laudable. And we also have the advantage, the filing fees are being reduced. And that shows the ease of doing business mindset of this particular bill. If you are filing charges at the Corporate Affairs Commission, that is when you obtain loan and you are filing that particular charge, what the law provides now is that the fee that the Corporate Affairs Commission will charge will not exceed. In fact, that is the beauty of this law. They've stated the upper limit will not exceed 0.35% of the charge. Unlike the 1990 Act, which relates to if it's a private company, you pay 10,000 per 1 million. If it's a public company, you pay 20,000 per 1 million. So if you are taking a bill, so it's ad valorem, it's very high. But now it has been said that it will not exceed. So the expectation of stakeholders is that since CAC has been given a roof, maybe they will come down. If they say it shall not exceed, maybe they will come down to 0.2% or something. It's just to facilitate the ease of doing business. And another good innovation of this particular legislation is that, although it is worded in the law that in addition to posting notices of meetings to shareholders, that you can also send it electronically. But by the time you look at the definition of registered address in the Act is defined to include electronic address. So it means that if a shareholder has communicated his email address to you, the company can legitimately now send notice of annual general meeting, send annual report, because prior to this time, what companies have done is to amend the articles to give them that leeway to send notices and documents to shareholders using electronic platform. However, with this law, it is now legitimate for the shareholders that you have their email addresses to send documents to them virtually, electronically. And the beauty of that is that there will be substantial reduction in the cost of managing general meetings or sending information to shareholders. We are all aware of the problem in the country. Postal system is not as fast as it used to be several years ago. With electronic dispatch of notice of general meeting, shareholders can get this particular document very fast. So the issue of loss in transit will be substantially addressed, and it's something that I expect that will take advantage of because it will be in the interest of all shareholders. And for another good aspect is the enhanced transparency that has been completed. Now, in the 1990 Act, it is required that if you are a substantial shareholder, which was defined as 10% of the voting rights, now that has been reduced to 5% of the voting rights. So if you are a substantial shareholder, you must notify the company, and then the company must also notify the shareholders, notify the commission as soon as possible. And that aligns with the definition of substantial shareholding in the codes of corporate governance. Because we'll be having this discussion, the code says 5, the law says 10. And ordinarily, the provisions of the law surpasses the code. Now we have an alignment, and that provides something that is very, very encouraging. And the aspect also that we should not forget, maybe there will be a way to manage that going forward, is that if you look at the definition of independent or executive directors in this new law, it appears not in tandem with what we have in the Code of Corporate Governance, particularly the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018. The definition of independent or executive director appears to be stricter in the code than in this new law. The new law, ordinarily, this aspect should have been left for corporate governance, the code, because when you make it this rigid, it becomes difficult to amend. A person is now defined as an independent executive director if he does not get remuneration of more than 20 million from the company, if his shareholding in the company does not exceed 30%. Whereas in the code, the definition of shareholding of an independent executive director is that he owns shares that does not exceed 0.01%. Now, this one is talking about 30%. The question is this: there is absolutely a conflict. And if you want to go strictly with it, then an entity can say, this is, I will rely on the provision of CAMA 2020 because that is the law. Whereas the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance is not a law, it's more of apply and explain. It would have been better if this aspect had been left for corporate governance, or was an alignment one way or the other, so that it won't create avoidable confusion in the system. So by and large, we as we said, we are happy with the new code. My view in life is that every new initiative is subject to improvement, and the reason is simple: the biggest room in the whole world is the room for improvement. So and we are hopeful that it will not take us another 30 years for us to have a new law, and that is not the trend in any advanced or developing economies. The normal trend that happens is that you have Code of Corporate Governance coming up to introduce best practices, and after about 5, maximum of 7 years, those best practices, after they have been imbibed, are now being incorporated in the law. Now we have a situation whereby the law has been on for 30 years. Code of Corporate Governance, we have the first one 2003, the second one 2011, the other one 2018. So if you look at the intervals, an interval of 7 years, whereas the law is far, far behind. So the appeal is that as far as possible, we are in 2020, at the maximum in the next 5 years, we should be in a position to look at this new law. We do not need to wait until we repeal a law. What is required is to amend the law. Why this particular 1990 was repealed was the fact that it has been there for 30 years. So they were conscious of the fact that it has outlived its usefulness. Whereas if we are reviewing our laws regularly, it will just require an amendment. That is, you are amending subsection. So that is why we expect maybe in the next 2 years, amendments should be coming gradually to address some of these areas And I will expect all stakeholders, including the regulatory authority, to have a receptive mind to all suggestions. If they have superior arguments, they should also put those superior arguments forward. But the mindset should be a mindset that we are in it together, a mindset that we should jointly find solution, a mindset of listening to all stakeholders. At least for this bill, we attended the public hearing when the bill was at the National Assembly, we made it. So the expectation is that all stakeholders, including the Corporate Affairs Commission, should be willing to discuss, listening to some gray areas, take note of the gaps, and as much as possible try to close this gap. And particularly the one that is very obvious now is this one that will allow public companies to hold their AGMs virtually, electronically, in order to, as much as possible, introduce that element of flexibility in the system, and so that, God forbid, if this COVID continues to next year, companies will hold their AGM. For private companies, it's no longer an issue because they can now hold their AGMs electronically. But for public companies, they do not know what to do, and that is why I will expect that between now and the end of the year, there will be a solution.
President, sir.
Yes.
We have also received like 3 other comments from members on the other side. One, there are 2 comments that are actually talking about the commencement date of the act. They are saying that the effective date for the new CAMA might not be as early as we envisaged because of the design of the forms and other processes being used at CAC. That's a comment from Kende, Abiri, and AGK. Another person is asking a question: does electronic sending notice of AGM include through WhatsApp?
Well, my understanding of electronic platform is that we have 2 modes of disseminating information, manually or electronically. So the question will then be, is WhatsApp electronic means or manual? I would say it's manual. I would say it's electronic. So anything that is not manual falls within the category of electronic. So if that is the communication that the shareholder has given as the mode by which the register mode by which it should be communicated with, I don't see any reason with that. I know shareholders that have attended meetings via WhatsApp, a joint meeting via WhatsApp. So that is electronic. At least it's better than manual. We may be looking at the level of whether it's a low level electronic form, but the most important thing is that anything that gives you opportunity to send or disseminate information instantaneously is better than the manual form. For example, if I'm posting a letter to as close as maybe Bode here, there's no way that letter can get to Bode in the next 30 minutes. Whereas if I'm sending a mail or a WhatsApp to anybody, the possibility that that person will receive that message in maximum of 2 minutes is very high. So I think that is why we need to embrace. And this is an area where I will be appealing, and the institute will be appealing to all shareholders as much as possible. The level of penetration, telephone penetration in the country is one of the highest. And I will appeal to all shareholders to actually key to this e-dividend management system, communicate their electronic or email address if they do not have email, WhatsApp number through which company can send documents. I have received a shareholder in some companies. I have received their AGM notices and other reports via WhatsApp. I can open them because the most important thing is that ability to access the information and read them. They are legible. The beauty of electronic documentation is that they are also mobile. You can read anywhere. So I appeal to all shareholders to please, since they have telephone, and a lot of them they have, even though they are not using the Instagram or whatever, but a lot of them also have joined, or they have platform, they are part of WhatsApp platform. I appeal to them to assist the government, to also assist the shareholder community by communicating their emails, their WhatsApp numbers to the registrars, to the company, so that we can, as much as possible, eliminate this manual mode of sending documents that will not get to them because the postal system is deficient, and nobody needs to locate your address because of the complexity. Because with WhatsApp or electronic means, I don't need to look for where you are. You can be outside the country and you will still access it. So it's an appeal. We should not be expecting that government should do everything. This is something exclusively within the control of the shareholder community. And I appeal to the shareholders association. I know a lot of them have joined this press conference. Please talk to your members. They have emails. Those that do not have email, they have WhatsApp. They receive a lot of jokes via WhatsApp. Those jokes will not bring money to their pockets. However, information like WhatsApp, like the annual report or information from company or dividend will bring money to you. So let them support the system so that we can drive down this unclaimed dividend as soon as possible, and then we can encourage the company to also reduce expenses in organizing the year. With time, the expectation is that if we allow electronic agent to be held electronically, is to ensure that people can also participate from wherever they are. For example, we are having this press conference. The registrar is reading out the questions from people. They are not here. So that is the beauty of, whereas if we ask everybody to congregate here, some might want to come, but there will be traffic. Some might want to come, there will be other pressing issues. But in your comfort of your homes, in the offices, you can listen to it, and that is why we just need to move on to the next level. For me, I've described COVID as a digital, what in the spirit realm, they call it a rapture. COVID is like a digital rapture of the workplace. All the means or the modes of working have now been elevated mandatorily because we don't have option to digital platform. So when churches and pastors are talking about rapture, COVID has introduced its own digital rapture of the workplace, and we just need to move along that platform. And for example, I know that a lot of believers, whether Muslim or Christians, they've been participating in all the services since March. Nothing has been lost, and it's because of this digital platform that we have been forced to join. It has also given us the opportunity to know how to use our phones better. Prior to COVID, maybe some of us utilize at the maximum 20% of the capability of our phones. Now we know how to maneuver, how to use those particular platforms better. We get better information, training programs, free training programs, join, and it's enriching, and nobody should be left out. And that's why we are appealing to all our stakeholders, particularly shareholders, because this particular law is substantially to protect the interests of shareholders, because we are talking of companies, and the major shareholders or stakeholders in any company are the shareholders. So we want the buy-in of the shareholders in this particular law. Let's try as far as possible to take maximum advantage of this to enhance our mode of operating, also to drive down the cost. If by the grace of God, with the private companies, I will not expect any private company, except if it becomes inevitable, to have a macro AGM. If we are having webinars attended by 500 participants, 1,000 participants, there is no reason why we cannot have AGM that will be attended by all the shareholders. And that is why I do not see any problem with AGM for public companies that will be held electronically. We have webinars of 1 and 1,000. So why can't we empower all our shareholders? And they put in their questions on the platform, the chat box, and then we participate and we ask questions and they respond. Instead of insisting on this manual way of meeting, which does not add any value, it only increases cost. And when there is an increase in cost, it reduces the profit that is available. When there is reduction in profit, there is reduction in dividend due to shareholders. So it is an appeal from the institute to all stakeholders. Let's try as much as possible to join this particular new development, digital way of operating, digital way of disseminating information, so that we can take maximum advantage of this. Good thing, the CAC has now introduced this platform. File electronically, get whatever you want electronically. So let's just move ahead with the new development so that we can take maximum advantage. You see,
Just on a final note, Mrs. Soraya is asking, what is in the new CAMA for the protection of minority shareholders?
There is substantial provision for the protection of minority shareholders in the new CAMA as we have in the old CAMA. It's just to ensure, as I said, the most important innovation in this particular act is basically they are looking at how to ensure that interests of key stakeholders are protected, like the minorities. So we have the minorities now being protected in terms of the requirements related to what you need to prove in order to initiate an action to expose maybe oppressive conduct. It has now been enhanced in such a way that all shareholders will be in a position to actually protect their interests, and then it will be difficult for the majority to actually do something that will not be in their interest. And that is an area that also supports the reason why I raised the question the other time. This obligation imposed on the majority shareholder to appoint 3 independent non-executive directors. I would have expected that that should have been an area that would have been considered to the minorities, because yes, the independent shareholders, they are supposed to look after the interests of all stakeholders. I would not expect that the burden of appointing independent non-executive directors should have been given exclusively to those who have the right to appoint majority of the board members, because that means that you are empowering them more than the minority shareholders. However, I expect that along the line, because all appointments or elections of directors are eventually, I use eventually, those who are in practice knows the reason why I'm saying eventually. Because when there are casual vacancies, the directors will appoint those to fill the casual vacancies. However, those people appointed will still be presented to the shareholders for ratification or approval. So I will still expect that the shareholders, when those presentations are made to them, whether of the independent or executive director or any director, they will be in a position to actually decide those the directors that will represent the interests of the company and the stakeholders of the company, because that is the way to go. Because in any company, except we have a company that is jointly owned, there is no way that there won't be a minority and a majority. And the only way the company can succeed is when that company is able to incorporate, accommodate, and take care of the interests of both the minority and the majority. That is the only way to do. If the majority insists that they must have their way always, it will create a problem. Minority also should respect that the majority have a stake in the business, and it must be a win-win situation. And that is why more of collaboration is required. The shareholders also must be in a position to ask relevant questions when they have the opportunities. At AGM provides the best opportunities for shareholders to ask questions. Some of those answers to the questions might appear not satisfactory to the shareholders, but be conscious of one fact, which I have taken note for a very long time. Behind or incorporated within every no to any question is a yes. If somebody has responded in a way that you are not satisfied, be conscious that that person has heard what you said. Even if he is not accepting it now, you will also think through it and will say, maybe it makes sense. So we should not look at it that, yes, it's just talk shop, we just say they will not listen. I'm very sure that the stakeholders, after the AGM, will go back to their offices and then review all the questions that they asked and find a way to internalize them and implement those questions, the issues raised, so that they can have a better company. Because it's only when the company is in existence That is when you can have directors, you can have management. If the company is not in existence, everybody will go home. So it's in the interest of all stakeholders that the company must be in existence. It's in the interest of the company, it's in the interest of the government, it's in the interest of Corporate Affairs Commission, it's in the interest of the employees, and even the suppliers, distributors, whatever, are to ensure that the company is a going concern.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. A quotation has just been patented to you, sir. Chineye just said COVID-19 is the digital rapture of the workplace. Mr. Bode, Ayeku, FCIS, President and Chairman of the Council of it, sir.
That is the symptom of fact. Nobody in January, nobody would have envisaged that we will be forced to work from home. Even the best of companies, if their employees had proposed to their employer to say we work from home, the thinking of every employer that we won't do anything, we will be sleeping at home. However, we have now discovered that people work longer at home than when they are in the office. You know, when you go to the office, there is a closing time. But at home, there is no closing time. You work, people call you. In fact, people just assume that you are waiting for them. They block your schedule. They fix meeting without consulting you because you are at home. So they assume that since you are at home, and particularly during the period of the lockdown, they know you don't leave your house. So it's sure that you'll be at home. However, as of January and February 2020, people will not just call you. If it's on the Saturday, maybe it's attending a party. Now people know that you are at home and you always pick their call. So that is the way to go. The world has changed from March, and anybody that is still glued to the manual system of working definitely is far behind. That's why if you look at the private universities, despite the fact that the schools are closed, they are progressing excellently well, as if nothing has happened. It's only the public one that are yet to find. And the good thing is that for every challenge, it's an opportunity. The private universities that are migrated to digital platform, they did not plan for it. But immediately that opportunity, the challenge came, they saw opportunity and they moved into it. And so that is why we are appealing, and it applies also to government. We see appeal to government, this digital platform that CAC has introduced, that file everything. We as an institute, we are saying that all government agencies should imbibe digital platform in filing returns, in getting responses. However, what we demand from all MDAs is that there must be timeline within which transactions must be completed. It's not enough for me to file documents. I must also have an assurance that when I file my documents and they are complete, within so number of time, it will be done. That is the contract we want with the government. And I'm very sure that the government will support us in order to succeed. Okay, so I thank you all. Maybe who is to give the vote of thanks?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. On behalf of the Institute, we want to thank all the persons, institutions, and other stakeholders that have dialed into this particular press conference. We also want to especially thank our media partner for showing up to cover this event. As the President has mentioned earlier, it's a continuous process of expatiation and education of all concerned, so that in a couple of months we'll all be comfortable with the new CAMA 2020. On behalf of ICSAN, we want to thank everybody for their role in making this particular event a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, national anthem. 1, 2, go.
Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's obey, to serve our father's land with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our official post is now.